As I mentioned in the last show, my favorite, if I had to choose my favorite adventure of all time, and I only got one choice, I would have to pick New Zealand. So in the last show, we had an encore production of part 1 of my New Zealand adventures, and here is part 2. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, I almost forgot. Don't forget, Active Adventures is one of my affiliates, so they've given ATTA listeners an exclusive promo code that you won't find anywhere on the web. If you use the promo code ATTA200, that'll get you $200 off of any Active Adventures or COSTA Adventure multi-day tours. Now with that, let's get on with the show. Picture some dramatic movie music. You know the crescendo's building. You hear build, build, build. I can't tell you the movie score because I don't go to those kinds of movies that much, but I can tell when something big is about to happen. So our eyes are closed. We're hearing this dramatic music, and the music is building, building, building. And then finally Leanna says, okay, open your eyes. Oh my God. It is as dramatic of a landscape as one can imagine. The recent rains have been a blessing as the waterfalls are bulging in everywhere. We are a wee little thing on a low road surrounded by towering granite mountains bursting with waterfalls. These peaks are about 1,600 to 1,800 meters high, and there's a helicopter above us, and it looks like a bumblebee. I feel like a pinprick on the planet surrounded by these mountains. Surely this must have been God's final landscape before he rested. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Today we're doing part 2 of my New Zealand adventure on the South Island. We're going to visit Wanaka, Milford Sound, and hike some of New Zealand's iconic trails, plus get a once-in-a-lifetime view of RICA, Mount Cook, New Zealand's tallest mountain, and from a sheep station, no less. So let's get started. I've biked many times in the past, but only mountain biked once, and that's a funny story. A little embarrassing. About 10 years ago, I had joined a hiking group in Raleigh to learn how to hike and to backpack. And on one hike, I met a young couple about 20 years my junior that I connected with while we were hiking. Afterwards, we exchanged phone numbers, and Mia asked me if I had a mountain bike. And remember, at this point, I'm super new at doing any of these outdoor kinds of things. And I told her, well, I have a fat tired bike, to which she said, great. Next Saturday, we're going to Mountain Bike Umstead. Do you want to join us? I'm like, sure. I said, delighted to be included. So I show up the following Saturday, and this couple, whom I could tell were fit when I met them, are now in these sleek, skin-tight, frictionless, super, uber cool, tight biking outfits, and even to my untrained eye, are really, really nice-looking mountain bikes. Me, I'm in shorts and brought along my $15 yard sale Huffy I'd picked up one weekend. They had also invited a 30-year-old guy who had a $4,000 custom-made mountain bike. I can already tell I'm probably in over my head. But they were very sweet, and off we go. And it was all I could do to get me and my bike up these hills. And I was terrified going on the downhills. After a while, I had to walk the bike even up the hills. Mia would stay with me, and when I reached the top, the guys who'd been waiting would greet us and start biking again, so I got no rest. I never got a chance to catch my breath before heading out to do some more. Thinking I'd be unable to walk the next day, I had canceled a hike I had scheduled. And for some reason, I can't imagine why, they never invited me to mountain bike with them again. The next time Mia called, she said she wanted to go shopping. Go figure. Having that somewhat embarrassing and to me a little bit traumatic experience in my mind, I'm cautiously excited about today's event. We are going to be mountain biking from Hawaii to Wanaka, and I don't know what to expect. From what I understand, we're going to be biking from some dense beach forest into some semi-arid mountainous terrain over to Lake Hawaii. I know I'm probably saying all that wrong. Sorry to the Maori people and New Zealanders. I'm sorry I'm butchering locations and names. To Lake Hawaii, where we're going to bike along the scenic Hawaii River Trail to the lakeside town of Wanaka. So far, so good. This is nothing like my Umstead disaster. I'm doing all right. I'm keeping up fine, and I'm sure that if it helps, I have a really nice mountain bike instead of my $15 Huffy. So it doesn't take long for me to relax and take in the beautiful scenery. Now, you and I might think that an abundance of foxgloves and lupines at their peak bloom is stunning, but Leanna and MJ are not amused. These beautiful plants have escaped cultivation and run rampant among all the sunny trails and fields. I know they've gone rogue, But weeds to them or not, it was a glorious ride through tens of thousands of full blooming hillsides. Truly beautiful colors in all shades of pastel. Really, really pretty. And both lupines and foxgloves are these tall, spiky flowers with little like bell-like flowers on them going down the stem. Really pretty. On one somewhat twitchy pass, we had to bike down a steep hill to connect to the trail down below, and I did it. My roommate Rachel, who's a much better biker than me, did so too, but there was a couple that was waiting to head up the hill, and they were blocking her at the bottom at the turn. So to avoid them, she turned sharply, and then she tipped over and took a tumble. I think it was the couple's fault, not Rachel's, but Leanna and MJ got her all cleaned up with their first aid kit. One nice thing about being on this Active Adventures tour is that this was a supported bike trip today, so Rachel had the opportunity to ride in the van for a little bit until she felt better and was able to come back on the trail with us. In one section, we went through a town and had to bike up a really steep long hill. I was riding at the back of the pack, per usual, and I could see that several in my group had decided to walk it up the last stretch. I was having visions of my Umstead disaster, and I said, no way, not this time. This time, it's going to be different. And I don't know how my thighs did this. Actually, I do, because it wasn't my thighs. It was my mind. I was determined. I'm going to bike all the way up that friggin' hill. And I'm telling myself, just do 5 more seconds. You can do 5 seconds. Now just do another 5 seconds, another 5 seconds, until I finally reached the top. I was so uber proud of myself and my body. I even biked rather than walked my bike across a long swing bridge, and I've even got the picture to prove it. Most of the trail was fairly level, and so it was more pleasant and beautiful than challenging. But there were a couple little twitchy places, and I was proud of myself for going for it. Like I said, I'm a hiker, not necessarily a biker. And by midday, we reached Wanaka. Wanaka is probably second to Queenstown as far as adventure goes. It has all the same kinds of things, but it's not quite as busy. And Wanaka also has New Zealand's most famous and photographed tree. It grows up out of the lake water. And during our picnic lunch along the shoreline, Manny ran like heck to go see it for himself. And it is beautiful. Next up, we're heading to Queenstown, New Zealand's adventure capital. Here we're going to be right downtown in all the action, and we'll have a free day tomorrow. The group scatters in Queenstown to experience our different interests. It turns out Manny is an adrenaline junkie and does everything terrifying out there. Well, not everything, but a lot. Carol and Bill also seem to taunt the gods, and they do the highest bungee jump out there. 134 meter, about 440-foot drop. That's, 1.5 football fields? No way. Never doing that. And then Manny, crazy enough, he does that, and then he goes and sits backwards on a chair and lets them push him off the ledge. No way. Carol is fearless, and in her and some of the others, I see that same lack of survival instinct when we do another adventure on the North Island, the story I'll be telling you in the next episode. Some of the others horseback rided, they hiked, or just chilled out. Manny also boogie boarded down the river that I rafted. Good for them. Those kinds of things aren't my kind of adventure, but the good thing about Queenstown is they truly have an adventure for everybody, no matter what your interest is and what your degree of twitchiness is. It is a really cool town. Me, for the most part, I've been traveling for a few weeks, and so I mostly just chilled and drank in the harbor scenes and people watched. Can it get any better? Let's see, because tomorrow we're going to Fjordland. En route, we make a pit stop at Garson and sample Manuka honey. This is rumored to cure just about anything due to its antibiotic properties. The shop sells not just the honey, but it's also used as an ingredient for lotions and potions and just about anything else they can think of. It's sweet, but not overly so. Expensive, and yeah, it's a bit pricey. And I pass. We also notice along the ride there seems to be a lot of deer. I mean a lot of deer. Capital L-O-T deer. We soon realize that the deer are captive. Even though they can jump over the fence, they're staying inside the fences. They're choosing not to because they're being fed like livestock. The town of Mossburn is the deer capital. Back in the 1900s, the English brought over deer to hunt. However, the deer destroyed the ceilings of the forest, and so the government decided to cull the deer and paid a bounty for each tail, now making deer a profitable commodity. For many, deer tails became their primary source of income for a while. And they used to have lads. Note that I use the word lads, not guys. So they had some lads jump out of the helicopter on top of the deer and wrestle them to the ground, tie up their legs, and then drag them back to the helicopter. Sometimes they'd fire a net out to capture them and then go down and get them with the horses. Once a deer was in a paddock, they're easy to domesticate, and they're easier to take care of than sheep. Deer are not used just for the meat today, but also for the velvet. We pass a little red house with a telephone pole, and Leanna tells us that's the last telephone pole. We are now officially off the grid. On the coastline here, there are what was once thought to be 14 sounds, like Milford Sound. But it turns out that they're fjords carved by the glaciers, so they just named the whole area Fjordland. Then that kind of covered up the boo-boo. After all these stops, we finally make it to Fjordland, arguably New Zealand's most famous national park. Now, we're hiking part of the Routeburn Track, one of New Zealand's most popular trails. From the path, we're going to see incredible views of Hollyford Valley, as well as Lake Marion and Mount Christina. We make it up to Key Summit. This is one of those jackets on, jackets off kind of a hikes. The rain jacket on, then the rain jacket's off. The thermal on, thermal off. But it was wonderful. Like I always tell you, when you go into the mountains, you need to be prepared for all 4 seasons in a day. The previous week, a group of school children and their teacher had climbed up in their summer gear, got stranded by a late storm, and I'm betting it's the one that grounded me up in Auckland, and so they ended up staying in a hut for 5 days until the weather cleared enough and warmed up enough for them to leave the hut. When you get to the summit, you can see 3 rivers to the coast, and 3 separate glaciers carved these rivers. At Key Summit, and I'll put a nice photo of this on the website, we're looking at an alpine wetland. It's really unusual looking with the teeny little alpine plants and the grasses. It's the most unique. I'd never seen a landscape like this before. And the water is so clean that you can drink from the little dribbles coming through the moss and through the cracks in the rocks. Back in the parking lot, Kia birds, the only alpine parrots, stop by and they're checking us out and they're hopping along the van and see maybe if they can get a treat or what we're up to and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of cute. The Kia bird has the intelligence of a 4-year-old. They're super inquisitive and very cute. This was a great hike, but little did I know the best was yet to come. We get back in the van and are heading to Milford Sound. As we approach Homer Tunnel, Leanna pulls over for us to take a peek. Over the course of about 20 years, Homer Tunnel was literally carved out with pickaxes and dynamite and is 1.2 kilometers or about 3/4 mile long of unserviced granite. When you go in there, instead of like the tiled tunnels that you often see most times, you just see chiseled granite. Super cool. And for those that are immodest, there's an annual naked tunnel run. Sneakers and headlamps are accepted, but the rest of the time, you just run naked through the tunnel in a race. The winning female gets a naked Barbie doll, so of course the male gets a naked Ken. I told you the Kiwis are a fun-loving group. As we near the end of the tunnel, Leanna tells us to close our eyes and don't open them until she says so. Now, picture some dramatic movie music. You know the crescendo's building. You hear build, build, build. I can't tell you the movie score because I don't go to those kinds of movies that much, but I can tell when something big is about to happen. So our eyes are closed. We're hearing this dramatic music, and the music is building, 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 and then finally Leanna says, "Okay, open your eyes." Oh my God. It is as dramatic of a landscape as one can imagine. The recent rains have been a blessing as the waterfalls are bulging in everywhere. We are a wee little thing on a low road surrounded by towering granite mountains bursting with waterfalls. We are in fact in a U-shaped valley carved by the glaciers and canyons carved by the rivers. These peaks are about 1,600 to 1,800 meters high, and there's a helicopter above us, and it looks like a bumblebee. I feel like a pinprick on the planet surrounded by these mountains. Surely this must have been God's final landscape before he rested. I learned the term treevalanche. There is so little soil here that the tree roots that make it intertwine and lock onto the moss-covered granite, and eventually, sometimes, they can tip over. Captain Cook gets lots of credit for exploring New Zealand, but actually he missed Milford Sound. The first Westerner to discover it was a Welsh fur seal hunter. Boy, did Cook miss out on a beauty. And our group was lucky to be able to stay in Milford Sound at a comfortable lodge. Most folks just come in and out and do a boat tour of the sound, then leave in order to make it back to Queenstown that night. Milford simply doesn't have the accommodations. There's no room and there's only 2 lodges. So unlike most tourists, this means we have more time in Milford and don't have to cram back and forth in a day. 4 hours each way, getting on the bus somewhere around 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning. Ouch! And this is a super remote area, and so I'm glad Active has the connections to make sure that their guests don't have to go through that grueling day in order to see this magnificent sound. In the morning, we're to kayak the sound. How cool is that? However, the winds are against us, so the guide makes a judgment call and we instead kayak into some tributaries, including the Devil's Den. This is a super beautiful and at the same time a little bit creepy tributary shrouded in a canopy of trees. It's beautiful. I'll put the shot on the website. And it turns out that our guide made the right call, as another kayak group had to be brought back via boat. At one point, the winds picked up so much that he had us form a kind of a raft of kayaks by grabbing onto each other's. Afterwards, we walked over to the terminal where the tour boats land. It was fun looking out over the sound, and I wish we had time for a tour ourselves. Being New Zealand's most popular destination, this is a crowded place, and the small airport is one of New Zealand's busiest. Everyone wants to see Milford Sound. It is striking, and it makes you feel small, with its iconic rising mountain rock faces darting straight up from the sea, some almost 4,000 feet high, about 1,200 meters. It is considered one of the most spectacular sights in the world. Old Rudy Kipling considered it the eighth wonder of the world, and I certainly agree. The New Zealand sandfly is a pest in this area. Maori legend has it that it was created to keep people moving and working instead of staring at Milford's incredible natural beauty. Gratefully, I don't remember the sandfly being much of an issue. Remember, don't wear black. In too short of order, it's time to head back down towards town. But first we stop to hike along the Kepler Track, one of New Zealand's most popular trails. I consider myself a social loner. I love people, but also like a lot of alone time. Being with a group now for most of the past 10 days, instead of hiking with others today, I chose to hike solo for some time. I wanted some me time. The trail was obvious and I doubt I could get lost. And you know me, I always have my emergency kit. At the beginning of our trip, Active gave us an emergency kit that we were to keep with us at all times. Even though I told Leanna I already had one, she insisted I take the Active one as well. Today, it's just me and the river and a series of bellbirds, my New Zealand favorite bird. Except when I saw some kids on the other side of the river doing a rope swing into the river, I didn't see anybody for hours. If the rope was on my side, I'd ask to try it. I like being back in the beach forest, and I love being alongside the Waiau River. W-A-I-A-U River. Waiau River. Tonight, we stay on the lake of Lake Manapori. It's a huge lake. It seems like we had it all to ourselves, and it's surprisingly not overdeveloped at all. In the morning, we head to Cromwell Old Town. The Clyde Dam flooded the old town, but fortunately some of the historic gold mining town's buildings were saved, and they relocated them above the new water table. We took time to explore the old town and its many historic buildings open to the public, mostly just donations accepted. Then we grabbed lunch, often a meat pie, and headed on to Lindis Pass to stay at a 5,000-hectare sheep farm where we'll be staying in the sheep shearer's cottage. En route, we get our first glimpse of Arioki Mount Cook, New Zealand's highest peak at 3,724 meters or 12,218 feet. Viewing Arioki, or Cloud Piercer, by the South Island Maori, we are blessed with clear skies and get a great view and photo op. Sir Edmund Hillary trained on Mount Cook for his Everest climb. And there's a land dispute, and that's why it's referred to both its Maori Arioki name as well as Mount Cook, usually at the same time. We also stop at a salmon farm where we not only feed the salmons, which was fun, Leanna and MJ also pick up some salmon for tonight's dinner. Yum! One thing I really liked about how Active ran this tour is that all of our meals were both healthy and delicious, and often MJ was cooking them, so we weren't eating a lot of usually pretty fatty restaurant meals. Even though we did go to restaurants periodically, most of the time MJ did the cooking, and she's a fabulous cook. MJ ensured that we had a great variety throughout the tour, and also she was buying things locally, so we were getting things as fresh as possible from the local communities. Kudos, MJ. When we get there, our first thought is, what a view. When lying on my bed, I can see Mount Cook outside the window overlooking a stunning lake. I decide I'm going to go into the water without a wetsuit. And this is a glacial lake, so it's cold. I'm sure it's not my brightest idea, but I'm determined. I walk down to the lake, And it's a pretty little walk, and then it gets kind of rocky, and I take off my shoes and shorts, so I'm in my bathing suit just trying to make it to the beach. And, of course, the foxgloves are dotted all even on the rocky beach. It's quite pretty. And the beach is just a mountain of large rubble and pebbles. They're mostly smooth, so they're not cutting me, but they're a little hard on the feet. So I gingerly walk into the lake, literally like a half an inch by half an inch. And I'm figuring I'm going to get used to this glacial cold water, but I swear I never do. After maybe 30 minutes, I'm maybe a little past my knees, and I'm like, I'm not making any progress. So finally, I just dunk. I dunk quickly, I'm cold, I've done it, and I get out. At least I did it. Manny comes a little bit later as I'm leaving, and he actually stays in the water for a bit. I don't know how he does it. It was a short bit, but he was in there for a bit. I just dunked. I was duly impressed. The clouds look a little eerie tonight, and it's doubtful we're going to have much of a good sunset, so we head in for dinner. But just to make sure, and I can't remember who, but I think it was Janice, goes out to check and yells, "Come out here now!" Mount Cook is on fire with the sun. The clouds have parted enough for a show. We caught the light at the magic hour, and it looks like the rays are spotlighting just the mountain. If you look at my photo, you're going to think it looks fantastic, and it looks like I did some kind of Photoshop to it. I didn't. I don't know how to. And this photo only represents a tenth of the beauty of what we actually saw, because, landscapes just don't come out, at least my landscapes, don't come out anywhere near as pretty as what I actually saw. And also at dusk, there had been a movie set filming on the farm, and they were breaking up for the day. In fact, they were wrapping totally, getting ready to go to Czechoslovakia, I think. So we watched a dozen medieval knights and waifs and a princess trudge off the set at the end of a long day. It was kind of funny and out of place. It was kind of cool. Some people even went over and chatted with them. I'm sure they were melting in those costumes. I think it was for a Netflix movie, and when I hear the movie's released, I'll let you know so you can see where I stayed. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m, and I was hoping for a clear sky. There's so little light pollution out there, and I got lucky. The sky was alight. The next day, our last real day of adventure, we get to choose between 2 hikes. A relatively flat hike, or we could hike 5 or 6 hours up over 2,000 steps to a main ridgeline above Muller Glacier. We're going to go up 1,300 meters in 2 kilometers, so it's virtually straight up and includes 2,200 steps, literal steps. And guess which I chose? Of course, I'm going to go up. And like I said, most of it really is actual steps, so it's a little bit hard. I pace myself as I do most of the times, and eventually I make it to the top. From this vantage point, I can see the river of rubble below, but also it's a great vantage point to see the glacier and the mountains. Definitely I've made the right choice. When I get down, I still have time to trek outside, so I take the flat trail as well, but that is so crowded. And I look at the lake, but it just didn't compare to the top one. So if you do this, suck it up and go up the stairs and go see the view from up top. That was truly satisfying. The group congregates in the visitor center and grabs a bite and a brew. We've had fun. It's been a good day. And plus, I think food and drink always taste better after a challenging hike. It's hard to believe that this is our last night. This has been an epic trip. Each day tops the previous. It's no wonder ACTA says Arioki Mount Cook for last. We are quiet on the ride back to Christchurch. It's a necessarily long drive, but there's always the view outside. I don't think they have the word ugly for landscape in New Zealand anywhere. This country, bar none, and I've been to many places, has the prettiest overall landscape. And it changes readily, magically, beautifully, really quickly. You'll be glaciers, rainforest, fields, vineyards. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. I'm delighted that I booked an extension. I'm going to be heading to the North Island tomorrow. Hint, hint, it only gets better. Truly, it only gets better. In part 3 of my New Zealand series, we're going to head to the tropical North Island, where I'm challenging my fears, our leaders go rogue, and the heli hike day gets topped. I can't wait to share it with you. If you've enjoyed today's show, you'll be doing me the greatest honor by sharing it. Share it by email to your friends, fellow adventurers, put it on Facebook, Instagram, and or Twitter, or however you connect with your friends. You are what makes Active Travel Adventures go and grow, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And don't forget to check out my new companion podcast that comes out on alternate Thursdays to this one, the Adventure Travel Show podcast. On that show, we focus on the how-tos of adventure travel, such as how to fit, choose, and pack a backpack, so far my most popular download. I thank you for listening, and I thank Active Adventures for hosting part of my New Zealand adventure, and I thank my body for being up to doing these adventures. I had the time of my life. If you decide to go to New Zealand, be sure to use my links or let them know, or for that matter, any of my affiliates, to let them know that you heard about it from me and from Ada. And don't forget the exclusive promo code ATA200 to save $200 off of any Active Adventures or Austin Adventures multi-day tours. It's an easy, no-cost way to support the show and keep the show ad-free. Thanks. Thanks again for listening. And again, we're going to be heading to the North Island when I do some truly, I think, over-the-top adventure. And I can't wait to share it with you. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.